Okay, I would like to, well, we do have a quorum here, by the way. We also have two members online tonight that are not here, but they can vote because we do have a quorum here. So I would like to call the Village of Lansing Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, March 28th to order at 7:03 p.m. Just a reminder, since we actually do have people here in public tonight, do please silence your cell phones if they're not silenced yet. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We just have the one, February 28th, 2023. I know people had a chance to look at it. Were there any additional comments or updates anyone wanted to make? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Pat. Second by Lorraine. All in favor? Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public, from the community, to bring anything up that they want to discuss that's not already on the agenda for this evening.
Susan Ainsley, covering for the Board of Trustees.
Hey, Susan.
Hi there, everyone.
I'll entertain a motion to close the public comment period.
I move to close the public comment period.
Motion.
I will second.
Second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is review of the new landscaping plan for special permit number 2020-4366. There's been a change in the approved landscaping plan for 20 Black Chin Boulevard. As per the conditions listed for special permit number 2020-4366 resolution, the planning board must approve the final landscaping plan, and the village code officer and the village engineer must sign off after inspection. Hey, Susan.
Apologies.
Mike, do you want to kick us off with this discussion?
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add to this is I reviewed this. I've spoken with Brent Cross mainly about if there was any effect on the stormwater situation by changing plans. Actually, Brent, there no noticeable effect as far as stormwater goes, but actually there would be an improvement because you took out some of the trees and you're putting in some grasses, which are going to hold the water even better. Like I said before, in front of you have Dan Siegel and Mike Ward, who can pretty much explain the reasoning behind the changes in the plannings and can explain any of the site plans that you've been provided tonight.
Okay. Just so everyone is aware, you've got the letter from Mike in front of you. You do have a letter from Dan as well. The first two pages of the larger pages, the first L102 and L103, are what was approved for the special permit, and the full color page 103 is what the proposed changes to the plan would look like. So if people have questions, actually, do you guys have anything you want to start off with before we?
I was going to start with a brief history and then turn it over to Dan.
Yeah, do you understand?
Yeah, no. Okay, I'm Mike Ward. I'm the Beggar Tangs representative. I'll take this off so everybody can hear me. We started this process almost 5 years ago. We hired a landscape architect and worked with T.G. Miller, Andy Sharaba, who generated what you have in front of you, the first two pages of what you have in front of you. And during the building process, we learned a lot about how water moves on the property and how water is managed with what is existing on the property. There are little tweaks we want to do to try to control a little more of the water, put it where it's supposed to be as opposed to where it's going. We hired Dan Siegel last year, and Dan has done some soil boring and found some interesting. Some of the things that were on the beginning of the plan are not really viable, and Dan can address all that. Just because of the 4 tests he did, he sent his guys out there to actually drill some holes and found where the rock layer is in certain zones within the building process. So I'll quickly turn it over to Dan because I don't think we need to I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. I don't have the expertise that Dan has. So thank you guys, and people.
Thanks. I don't know who's controlling these screens, but that one page that was just up a minute ago that was showing the color version would be great, so I could just point out one or two things. I won't belabor it any more than you want to hear, but thank you. Basically, the original landscape plan was sort of done as like an on-paper design without really any bearing and any relevance to the site conditions. So we went out and started looking at the site conditions. Some of these areas have bedrock that's like this close to the ground. And so we started looking at the site. These areas were actually supposed to get all redisturbed and reseeded with some sort of seed mix, all these sort of hatched areas. And when I looked at the site the first time, I thought, you know, please let's not do that, because they were all growing in beautifully with native vegetation. It was like the most gorgeous, naturally rebounding, regenerating meadow I've ever seen on a job site. So we felt like, my goodness, let's not tear that up just to reseed it with something that definitely won't work as well. So that was a huge, in my opinion, a huge environmental win for this site, because it's really probably the majority of the site. And then what we started to look at was, where are the parts of the site that need help and are not vegetating on their own, or that have a tendency to erode, or that need vegetation. And that's how we ended up determining placement for new stuff and new plantings on this site, which are up in here shown on this drawing, and around here, because this became the edge of the disturbed part of the site, and everything beyond here was in good shape. So this edge was sort of a weedy transition zone, and we tried to tame it a little bit, clean it up, and vegetate it. And then the pink is what's showing as the remaining proposed areas to plant. And we're really just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page with, as we try to finish up planting this year, to make sure that the areas that we've sort of identified as still needing a little help are okay as the areas to complete planting. This is sort of the one area that has a little bit of a swale naturally through it, a little creek that formed here for drainage. It's really historically where the drainage probably came through. So we were proposing to plant that because it's somewhat open. And then this was an area that was in the original landscape design to be planted anyway, which was like an along the driveway planting. This pink zone here would be planted as well. And then this area, just because it's still kind of rough and isn't really finished in terms of the rest of the property, seems like a natural place to reestablish vegetation. And our plan for all the pink zones is to plant all native species that have a track record of growing in this type of habitat and this type of site in Lansing on those lake slopes above the lake. And so the little two-sided thing that we wrote up, that I wrote up, is really just explaining why the original plan that wasn't really realistic, it wasn't our plan, and then how we determine what types of things will work, which is based on soil depth and other habitat conditions, which are empirical, and we go out there and see what's happening. And then a list of plants that we would be working with in these pink zones to finish. And I'm really not that familiar with this process from your side, so I'm trying to find out what type of flexibility is acceptable to put all those goals together. Your goals for erosion control and stabilization on the site, which are my goals too, and then doing that in a way that looks attractive. That's really what we're trying to do from my side of it, and I'm trying to find out exactly what will satisfy your process so that we can all say that everybody's happy.
Okay, well, thank you, so I appreciate that. And so everyone should have had a chance to read the letter that you sent. Thank you for that, and look over the plans that were included in that. So really, it's, probably a series of questions from various board members, and we can work towards what it is that the board is looking for to, kind of satisfy the kind of general goals that we really usually go after for a piece of property. So I'm sure that a couple people have questions. Does anyone want to start?
I'm not a board member. Can I ask a question? Because I have the same question that Dan just asked. So this is, when it came through the first time, was pretty much the most detailed landscape plan we've ever seen from a residence. And I'm just wondering, what is the, and then having to come back to revise it, what is the process? What is that exactly?
So just the general process, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the general process is here's what the, as one of the conditions of the special permit is an approved planting plan.
It's
That
because
plan,
you had a special permit.
yes, yep, that plan is now changing so that piece of it, the entire special permit doesn't have to be reapproved, Mike, right? But the planting plan has to be reapproved because it is changing.
Because the original house building had a special permit.
Right.
That's,
Yep.
okay. Got it.
That is correct.
Because it's in that steep slope district. I think there might be other reasons, but that was one of the reasons why there had to be a special permit.
Okay.
Questions?
I have a question. It's actually mostly for you guys, our tree ordinance. Do we have like a calculation of how many trees we're
So
supposed
they
to
wouldn't
have?
be subject to the tree ordinance,
Oh,
they
because it's
already
already-
had the special permit in place.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's only for permits that were issued after the tree
Mhm.
ordinance went into effect.
okay, good question. In that case, I don't have a ton of questions, because, I know the properties at that end of the village really well, and I know that you hit bedrock,
Oh, yeah.
8 inches down sometimes. So I have no qualms that, in your hands, it's gonna be, your goal is to make it vegetated and beautiful and hold the soil in place and maybe build more soil over time.
Yeah.
So I really kind of don't question that at all. The integrity is there.
Anything about the species, Emilia, or
No, it's
Lisa? or
a
anyone?
fantastic list. Remember, I thought, like, oh, I need to make sure to put that on a little post-it.
I don't want to say it's a better list than the original plan, because, I understand that's a process too, but this list was made after we learned more about the site and the space on perspective.
I think that's great, I mean,
So these that are in here, are these yours, or are these the original?
Yes, no, the green ones are ours, and they weren't really, those plantings were done partly to satisfy the goals of the client on the property, as far as landscape goals. And my approach to that was, if these are plants the client wants more or less integrated into the property, let's start by putting them in places where we have gaps in vegetation. And as I got more tied into this part of the process, I thought, well, I'm trying to understand everybody's goals, and once I realized what everybody's goals were, I thought, well, we definitely can make the next phases an all-native, basically beautiful erosion control planting. I mean, that's really what the goal is on that
Right.
second phase, is to resolve the erosion control hotspots, if there are any. I think they're cool spots, I don't really see any hotspots there. And make them beautiful, and that's really how we went from what you see in green to what you'll see in pink, different plant lists.
Okay, great, because saying Norway spruce and double fire and forsythia and the spirea, so those are kind of remnants from the older.
They were a way, in my opinion, they were sort of a way to bridge from the original plan to here. The original plan really didn't have native species on it, maybe a couple, but not really.
Okay.
Lisa or Jim? Lisa?
I just was wondering, I don't recall from the original, does our tree ordinance impact this in any way, or is this grandfathered?
This is grandfather.
Okay. Yeah, well, I have to read the document. Yeah, when I moved to Ithaca here, I'm on Cayuga Heights Road. And yeah, I had grand plans also. And yeah, you got to deal with the fact that there's just water coming down the hill and it keeps taking away the soil, and it will continue to do so, by the way. So I didn't, from my experience, which is not nearly as professional as Yamila's, but just anecdotally, I didn't see anything that didn't make sense here. And I still think there'll be some things that don't maybe make it so well. You'll find out. But I thought in general that this made a lot of sense. And as long as my main concern basically boiled down to erosion and, water flow to the other properties, that kind of thing, and whether there's any view shed issues for anyone else. And I don't think those exist, but maybe somebody could comment on that.
Well, I guess the two specific things that I take from that are, one, the water, the sort of the inevitable water movement on this property, and I will say, the majority of this property is incredibly stable. It's a beautiful thing. And that's not anything anyone did, except leaving places alone that were on their way back to being naturally revegetated. But that's really the purpose of identifying that, in particular, that middle pink zone is the one area where we have water that's sort of directed to move across the property. So that's one of the reasons I want to make sure that gets planted and vegetated, so that we jumpstart that. As far as the question of things not surviving, or that there's going to be percent mortality, that is probably inevitable on a site like this. And it definitely doesn't mean that everything on the list I provided is guaranteed work. But that's one of the reasons that the timing, I think, is important. That if we can do these plantings in April, I think they have a much better probability for success. And rather than waiting till fall, one time I wouldn't really want to do this in the middle of the summer. I just think that site goes from very wet to very dry.
Thank you.
And Lisa, when the original site was cleared, it was done quite well along with their excavator, and to kind of boost on what Dan was saying is, yeah, a lot of brush was taken out, but there wasn't a lot of ground that was actually disturbed, keeping the soil relatively stable in the area. And that
I
was
sort of recall that, and I remember a lot of it is just usual kind of junk stuff that we have, buckthorn and whatnot. So, yeah, okay, good.
That's exactly right. I would say 95% or more of what was taken off that site was buckthorn. And when you on the reference sites next door, most of what's growing is buckthorn. So regardless of what we're talking about specifically on the new plantings, the species diversity that's growing in those natural meadow areas is probably, I think there's 30 species of native plants in there. And when you look in those buckthorn woods, there may be 0. So I'm not saying it was a great thing to see a site clear, but it's nice to see large parts of that site growing back on their own and very healthy. That's a good thing.
Good.
Jim, did you have anything you wanted to ask or add?
No, I have nothing to add or to ask.
Okay. Anybody else? So if the board does want to move forward with this tonight, I think it's just a simple vote to approve the kind of the as-built here that was provided tonight. Okay. So if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the as-built planting plan that was provided. Motion by Pat. Second by Lorraine. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. There you go. Thanks. We appreciate you coming in, being here in person to go over with us and discuss it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to continue the discussion of the solar array draft law. The planning board will be reviewing and discussing a draft of the proposed solar array law. So after the last meeting, I do think that I captured all the comments that we had. So there were some changes that people wanted. I put them into a draft. There were just some of it was just including the statement of purpose that Lisa had written up. Some of it was just minor changes. There was one main, some of it was formatting stuff, and I can go over it a little bit more in detail. The biggest change really was including section 8, which is permitting for requirements for tier 3 solar energy systems. That was literally a copy and paste. So that is something that I don't think we necessarily should go over tonight, but I think we can go over the other changes, make sure that those make sense. And between this meeting and the next meeting, if people could, I think there are some things that we need to clean up between 6, 7, and 8, which is permitting requirements for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So I think we can do that, but starting at the first page, that was really just, and I think everyone has, because I gave like a fresh copy of this. So the first page, the statement of purpose there is really just a inclusion of what Lisa had and taking out what's in the model law. Did anyone have any other questions about that? It really was the draft that Lisa had provided, which I think we talked about. I think everyone kind of agreed that was good. You can have this one if you want, because I've got it up on my screen.
All right, perfect, thanks. Here, on, excuse me. So the rest of the changes we're going to discuss.
So what did you say about the statement and purpose again? Did you repeat it?
So the local law that we're going over, the New York State provides a model for municipalities to take and tailor to what works for them. So that's got model language in there about, oh, here's a general statement of purpose. We took a look at that and thought for the village it would be better to write one that more closely aligned with what the village thinks. So Lisa Shalala and I took a stab at that and kind of looked at what some other municipalities in the area had and wrote a revised draft for that. I did, so that's section 2, that's a statement of purpose. I'm gonna delete that too. Section 3 was definitely, go ahead.
Section 2.1,
Yes.
is that the best use of a visually aesthetic manner?
I don't know, that's what we had in there, but we can definitely move
I
stuff
mean, does
around.
that make sense to everybody for it to be in that line?
Or does it make sense for it to
Or,
be
I mean, should it be like
extended?
aesthetically, I just don't think visually
I see what you
aesthetic manner is the right sequence of words.
So that's number 1 under the statement of purpose.
Yeah. Because an aesthetic is.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually,
Active.
Yeah,
maybe it's better under number 2 where you mitigate the adverse impact, because it really, visually aesthetics, really is about how other people feel, I guess, when you say that.
I think some of it has to do later on when we talk about, how we want them, we talked a little bit about, and I included that language back in here, the heights above roof lines and which direction they're, things like that, so that part of that ties into visual
Yeah, I think
aesthetics
we
too.
talked about it being like mitigating adverse impacts on visual aesthetics or potentially.
Or you could put it in
Where
3.
notes.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe that, okay.
Previously being.
Okay, I'll get together with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm not sure where this is gonna end up going, but I would like whether it's visually aesthetic manner, but something along those lines that refer to visual aesthetics be in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think we'll move it down to section, what was that?
Either 2 or 3, actually, probably 2, I guess.
Yeah, Natalie's got.
Well, 2 or 3, whatever Natalie thinks, yeah, but you're right, it's not quite right there.
Oh, I wasn't saying it was wrong there, but I just, rather than somehow it being subsumed into the phrasing of mitigating adverse impacts, I'd like to see some specific reference or recognition of visual aesthetics.
Yeah, absolutely. I
As
think
a
it's
priority.
more appropriate place. Okay. Anything else in there? Sorry, I'm gonna jump ahead. Nope, okay. At the last meeting, we also talked about definitions, and so some of them I struck out. What I did, there's some that are still referenced, so I know there were some that we talked about just deleting, right? I do think if it's not referenced in here anywhere, we don't need the definition. So some of them we had talked about, oh, thanks, Mike. I'm gonna actually take that around. We had talked about removing some of them, but when I did just a quick search, some of them were still in there, in some of them, it's a definition that references another definition that is referenced somewhere else in the document. So I think that's something that we can look at and just clean up, because to Carolyn's point, right, we don't need a definition in there for something that we're not using. I don't think there's any point in that. I didn't want to take any more out after I added 8 in, because we haven't reviewed that yet, and I wasn't sure if any of them were referenced there. I kind of added that in after the fact. But I don't think anyone disagrees that if there's a definition that isn't referenced anywhere, that we need to keep it in there.
I just had a note on the definitions, if no one.
Yeah.
So I see you added the or heat for solar energy system for the geothermal,
Here's that one.
on the solar energy system.
Oh, yes, thank you.
But then solar panel
Yeah.
does not include or heat.
Yeah, so thank you. This is one of the ones that I did want to go over, because this was an attempt to capture solar thermal somewhere in with the solar energy stuff.
I'm having trouble hearing what you
Oh.
just said, actually.
Here's now.
So, we're on solar energy system, solar panel.
Yeah, so I was saying that Mike had added to the definition of solar energy system or heat. And that was discussed at the last meeting, because we wanted to capture geothermal or solar thermal. I should say.
Right.
But then the definition of solar panel does not also incorporate heat, just into electricity. So heat needs to be incorporated in the panels
The
somehow.
geothermal part, yeah, I was, oh yeah, it's not here, yeah, okay.
But solar thermal isn't a photovoltaic.
That's why I
I think
did put it
it's-
in there, because, and this was, again, a topic for discussion. So, right, there is a solar panel, which is literally photovoltaic, that is to convert, you know, the sunlight into energy. But then under solar energy system, that was trying to, I had gone through another draft where I thought I put a different definition in here for like I don't know if I called it thermal panel or something, but then I wasn't sure how to reference that throughout the rest of the document. So I wasn't sure what we wanted to do with that.
Well, the town actually has a little separate section for solar thermal energy systems. Maybe we want to do that, I don't know. As a definition, if we're gonna talk about it later, do we talk about it later?
Do we want to treat them differently? If we don't want to treat them differently, we don't have to define it differently.
Yeah, so I think this came up last time too, we talked about like battery energy storage systems too, and for that, they have an entirely separate model off for that, but there isn't one right for just solar thermal, so I think we did want to try to incorporate it in here. I don't know if we want to treat it differently though. I don't know enough about
Yeah, I know.
the differences between, you know, panels for thermal versus for, you know, electric, if there's considerations we need to take into effect, you know, as we talk about like, you know, the size of a system, whether that's number of panels, square footage, whatever, nameplate. I don't even know if they use nameplate capacity for thermal, I'm not
So I
sure.
think we do want to include it,
Yeah.
because we do want to have that control of the aesthetics.
Yeah.
You could strike the word photovoltaic and just say a device capable of collecting and converting solar energy into electricity or heat. And then that's blankets both.
So does solar thermal do electricity? No, it does heat, doesn't it?
It really just heats up a
Water.
closed loop of water.
Okay, so I think it's different personally, but
Yeah, but for the sake of defining everything and keeping it consistent through the document,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think striking the word photovoltaic and adding or heat to the end brings those two definitions in alignment with each other which are referenced throughout the entire rest of the document.
Right. And then the panel captures
It's a panel,
whether
right?
it's one
Whether
or the
you're,
other.
yeah.
And the village can still say what they want to say about its location and everything else.
That's absolutely right. It captures that aesthetic concern about we don't want you shading property or.
right. So, you know, there were some emails passed around about agrivoltaic or whatever we want to call it. Do we want to bring that into this or not?
I think, yeah, I think Pat, you had sent an email about, I know Lisa, you sent an email about it.
Well, I just heard it on NPR and I thought Lorraine and Pat both came across some stuff, but there is kind of this, you know, thing about, and it has height, you know, you make the panels higher and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of brings another whole dimension to it, and you can't just, you know, call it that. There's some standards that have to be set, but I don't know how far we want to go with this. Because we keep saying, well, we don't have any real land in our village, but we do have this rather large area, and who knows what the future will bring, is my point. I don't know.
Yeah. Did anyone else have a chance to look at those emails that went out? Should we table this to discuss at the next meeting? Because I read it right when it came out, and it's been a while.
Yeah, no.
I took a note, Lisa. Let's talk about it in between this meeting and the next meeting and see if, you know, if what we have covers the concerns there, if we need to separate. I mean, there's like the separate on-farm solar energy system. I wondered if, you know, maybe if there are concerns about it,
Part
maybe
of that, okay.
into that definition. If there are things that we are concerned about that we do want to capture, maybe I think the more that we can capture in the definitions makes things flow throughout the rest of the document in a safer fashion.
So I do have a question that we can, think about over the next week or so. So if we're talking about, integrating agricultural systems underneath our photovoltaics, we're already past tier 1 and tier 2.
Mhm.
And so that would be under a tier 3, is my assumption, because, you're not gonna do agriculture in less than 500 square feet.
Yeah.
Like at that kind of thing. So I wonder.
Right, that seems way too small to,
Right, and, but I can see how if we don't define it, there might be a homeowner who's like, well, I'm gonna put a garden under there, so now it needs to be, so I'm gonna use the agro model for that. So we have to think about how we might address it if somebody looks to the agricultural model to try to apply it to a home scale.
I thought we had talked last time to it, there were some pretty clear definitions of what constituted agricultural though. I don't remember, was it, I know that we've got the zones,
We talked
but
about it,
I just don't recall
I don't recall
what the discussion was.
but-
Well, you don't have to allow. Just don't change it.
Right,
Keep it as it is now, and
then you can't do,
then you can't do
That
that.
there,
You
yeah.
can't plant something underneath the solar panel and call it higher,
yeah, right.
which we don't want.
Yeah, I want to put a garden there.
So,
So
I
that
think
goes
it's,
Yeah.
then it's as is.
Yeah.
I don't wanna jump past tier 1 and tier 2, but I did notice that the definition of tier 3 should, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but it shouldn't be solar energy systems that are not tier 1 or tier 2. It should also be solar energy systems that are not subject to the state takeover.
And so,
I don't know how to phrase
yeah, the
that.
question I had for that is if you look at the original document, they had literally had like a tier 4 or something like that, which was things over a certain, it's pretty much anything that fell into the state regulations.
Mhm.
So we could add that,
Yeah.
and that would,
So I don't know how to say that exactly, but then below the wattage which is takeover by New York State, which is 25 megawatts
yeah,
right now, but it could change. So
yeah.
I just say state takeover level, but I don't know how exactly to phrase that.
I think and so this, my suggestion, I had one in here and I took it out just because it wasn't something that we had talked about. I didn't want to, there were a bunch of changes. But what I was going to say is let's add that kind of, that tier back in there that they say, hey, this tier is things that are, pretty much guided by the state, which we still get input on in the municipality.
But we don't even have to put that in there.
Well, then if we did that, then we could kind of reference that here in the definition of tier 3, or we could just put it right in
Let's
there.
limit 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Say excluding those systems subject to New York State oversight. Or I put the name of the department that oversights it, subject to the oversight pursuant to the law, pursuant to the New York State, whatever, pursuant to the NYSERDA regulation 26 or whatever it is.
But even if it does go to the state for approval, they're gonna go, the solar company on these big farms, they're gonna go to the state, they're gonna get, like an MOU from NYSERDA saying, okay, as long as you're municipal. Say it's okay, then
That's-
we'll grant you the permit or whatnot, but don't you still want to, any of the ones that sell to the state, don't you still want to review that?
I
Right,
thought that
we
we get
want them to
almost
still
no,
come here.
I thought we get almost no say. At that point, it's sort of like an airport or whatever, like it's out of your. That's my
For example,
understanding, but like that was like 2 or 3 years ago, but that was my understanding. Maybe that's wrong.
Yeah, but we can still lay down grounds for buffers and type of stuff if you've got a huge area. That, the state doesn't care about that.
Really? I didn't
We're
think we
gonna-
got to say
We're gonna
anything.
handle all the local issues of it.
I thought we didn't get to say anything once it hits that level, but maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I hope you are too.
I'm almost positive that the municipality get this.
All right, then we should leave it as is and not limit it.
Let me look really quick because they have.
And I'm sorry, the solar thermal, I kind of missed it when I was in there. Are you not including that in this?
No, we're going to take the word from solar panel, we're going to take the word photovoltaic out, and we're going to just take that out and put heat there. So now it's a panel, whether you're using it for electricity or for heat.
Okay, because we were talking about when they are ground mounted, it doesn't matter whether it's thermal or solar, it's still an issue that it's.
Yeah, and that'll be captured here. So we're changing the definitions of ground mounted. So ground mounted, whether you're using it for heat or energy, it's still ground mounted. So we still have the same restrictions. Whatever you're using it for, it's a ground mounted array.
You won't be able to use the unified solar permit for solar thermal. So we'll need to come up with some definition for solar thermal so you can exempt it out of that.
Right, because we did say that we always want the unified solar permit to be filled out. I think that we'll get down to that, but that's one of the requirements. I'll take a look though at
How much say we get on 4? Okay, good,
the original
okay.
document, because they did have some language in there about those larger ones specifically.
Hopefully I
And it might
just-
say something about what you can or can't do, or how much, yeah, if we get any oversight at all.
So could I ask a question? So when we say solar energy system, the whole thermal situation, are they really solar?
Yeah, yeah. Yep, because you're using the sunlight.
You still are using this isn't geothermal, this is
No,
solar.
This isn't geothermal.
Okay, all right, so it's considered a solar energy system. Okay,
Yeah, you had a photo that I think that you shared last week that had, one of the rooftops had,
Yep.
and it had the ones that look like tubes.
yep,
That's the solar thermal.
yep. I still, in my brain, somehow confuse it with the land one. Okay, going,
Okay.
okay,
The other thing that we did there under the definitions, and Lisa had brought this up last time, is I kind of made tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 their own definition. Before it was this kind of bulleted, it did follow the same formatting as all the other definitions, so we just cleaned that up. Didn't change anything under 4, which is applicability. Under 5, I did put in the changes that we had talked about, I think. So, go ahead.
but
Lisa.
I think under general requirements, I really am hoping that we will decide to adopt the the New York Unified Solar Permit. And so I'm wondering if we do decide to do that, whether that should be first, so sort of go from the state level, then down to the village level where a building permit and a special permit, or do you want to go from the least to the highest? I mean, I don't know. But I really thought it made a lot of sense after all our discussion that we should adopt the New York Unified Solar Permit. And then from there you would fork off into, depending on what you need, a building and then a special permit. And so I'm suggesting that if we do that, I would put that first as required for all, and then decide which needs a building permit and which needs a special.
Okay. Yeah, I changed that, so there's just an order of items in there, so.
Right.
Unified solar permit first, and then a building permit will be required, then a special permit will be required. Well, I guess this kind of goes back to Carolyn's question too, about if it is this thing that isn't tier 1, 2, or 3, and it's outside our purview and it goes to the state, we might want to put something back in there too, if we do have the ability to require a special permit for a big solar farm that comes in or something, we probably want to mention that in here, but once we figure that out, Carolyn, we can add that back into this section here too. But I think that was everything that we had talked about there. The big thing was that we wanted to use the unified solar permit, and that, a building permit only, a building permit for all of them, but only a special permit for tiers 2 and 3.
So, thought, so to me, general requirements is like, these will apply to all of the permits we're about to talk about. So we mentioned in tier 2 and 3 that they need a special permit required, and that the special permit applicants are subject to the rules required under 14559. Do we need to have it in general, or would you leave general just as like, everyone needs a building permit, everyone needs the solar energy, the solar permit, things that apply to all 3 tiers? Just a question, because it gets a little repetitive. Just a thought.
I think we flip-flop back and forth on that both ways. I know that Lisa and Carol and I talked about it at one point. We had some of that stuff up in the definition area, but then we said, okay, well, that's not really where this belongs. That's, you needing a building permit isn't a definition of what a tier 1 solar energy system is, so
Right.
we took it out of there.
I would agree with that because it does get a little repetitive. What we could do is strike B from that section, and you could put some general language that, please see your specific tier
Yeah.
for additional requirements.
And I've then added, if you do that, like in 7, in addition to the general requirements,
You need
all the
a special
additional
permit.
things.
Yeah.
I
That
think
makes
that we
it
had
much
that
clearer.
originally, and then Lisa really wanted it this way. She said
Okay.
she likes everything all up front.
Lisa?
So we spent the conversation last time and then did it like this. Maybe she's not noticing that right now.
No, you know what? I have to tell you, I'm glad I'm doing Zoom, but it is really crummy acoustics. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, really?
It's really hard to hear you guys. For me, I don't know whether it's just I don't know.
That is also why it's repetitive.
It's not you, Lisa. The acoustics of the meeting room are very echoey.
It's just, I feel like we need to have curtains all around or something. But at any rate, I'm going to have to probably cycle back because I don't want to slow everybody down here and talk. But usually I'm in agreement with Carolyn and or Mike on this stuff. And I'm not quite sure what you said, frankly.
So it's really just, the general requirements should be things that apply to everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do agree with this whole repetitive thing drives everyone that crazy. And so we want to be very specific so people know exactly. Because if I was trying to think of what I would do if I'm saying, well, oh, I'm not this tier, I'm this tier. I want to know exactly what I got to do. And I'm probably not going to read carefully the other stuff. So I don't want to be repetitive, but I want to be very clear what they need to do. That's all.
That's something though that Mike could provide as more of a builder's checklist, like, hey,
Exactly.
we're getting it, and so we can clean this up and actually put the things that are general in the general area, the things that are tier specific in the tier specific area. When you come to Mike saying, hey, I want to put in a solar thing and I'm thinking about doing this, Mike can at least say, I think that's tier 1, you need a building permit and a unified solar permit. I think, but refer to the local law because that's got all the detail. I think that's a 2, you're gonna need a special permit too, but go and read the solar law for all the specifics.
I want to ask about D, which I think I already raised this issue, and Mike, Scott, I think that we already talked about this, but signed and stamped by a professional engineer, is there ever going to be a situation where there's a solar company that installs panels, but they don't have an engineering license, and would they be then able to just, we started this, whatever, many years ago, with one of our objectives, making it easy for people to put solar panels if there was no barriers for neighbors and whatnot. I don't want to throw too many requirements in people's way if they want to bring solar power to the house in a non-invasive way to their neighbors. So my question is, do they have to have plans stamped by a licensed engineer, or is there a situation where there's just a solar panel company that can install solar panels and they can give Mike a plan that's perfectly acceptable? Mike, I feel like you already answered this for me, but I forgot the answer.
Yeah.
There's a requirement if it's, if a project is over $20,000, it's required to be stamped by a licensed engineer or architect.
So what if you put up $10,000 worth of panels? Can you do a non-stamp
It's also a
project?
requirement of the unified solar permit.
I don't know, hang on a
Once
second.
you buy into the unified solar permit, then everybody has to have engineering plans. And do you want to buy into the solar permit, but I don't want to make people have to get engineering plans if they don't need to.
Yeah, if it's $20,000, you're required to have an engineering stamp or an architecture stamp. What was your question about 10,000?
What if it's 10,000?
I'm just envisioning there being, a professional, competent installer of solar panels who's not an engineer. And I don't want to add an extra cost or delay to somebody who wants to then use that person. Does that
Wasn't that part of why we said we
Right,
probably,
and I don't think you heard me. In addition to that requirement that you said, it's a requirement of the unified solar permit to have.
exactly,
plans.
that's what I was gonna say. That I thought that's why I think if we adopt that, it
Yeah.
makes some of this other stuff go away.
Okay,
It's
well, I
gonna
prefer
it's
not
gonna be
to,
a
but
little
that's
difficult to avoid, only because you're adding, one of the elements that you're adding is also structural, because you're adding wood to a roof system.
okay,
It's maybe isn't designed.
okay, well, if it's necessary, it's fine, but if it's not necessary, I don't want to make people do it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it would be necessary just for safety's sake, but the other thing too to consider is that anybody who's, a licensed installer around here is going to have someone who's an engineer on staff.
Maybe,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the
The way it
necessity
is,
anytime you do that kind of thing on a roof.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with you. I think it's probably a very small situation, where you either don't meet that dollar threshold anyway. But I mean, right, what if somebody comes and says, I just want to put a couple solar panels to power my, I
yeah,
don't know,
and do it myself.
yeah, that's the thing, I'm gonna do it myself.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Then don't do it on the roof.
This may need to be, we talked about this before, as your solar systems mature and get easier and become smaller or whatnot, it might be beneficial, or it might even be possible for homeowners to put them in, and we're just going to make a change at that point, but we don't know what it's going to turn to at this, right now, we don't know what it's going to turn
But
to.
right now, it's an engineer situation. Okay, just asking.
want to play solar panels, huh? Okay. You're right, though, we did talk about that, so that's.
I knew we did. I knew I already lost about it.
Yeah, and I forgot what Mike said too.
I
so-
forgot why I lost.
Unified solar permit.
So we were talking about, going back to the idea of general, would it be worthwhile to have a sentence under general requirements to clarify that all people seeking, like, say we have an introductory license, that all projects will require these following?
Yes.
In addition, look to your tier for additional,
Tier-specific requirements
Yeah.
apply, yeah.
and I think that will
Some
make,
sort of intro line.
that would bring a lot more clarity, and that way Lisa will be happy.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else under general requirements there?
I think G would then also get omitted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not everyone not every one of these requires.
What requires site plan review?
Mike?
Mike's not.
You're getting your steps in today.
Lisa's right, you can't hear anything.
We need some sound panels.
What requires site plan review?
What requires site plan review?
Yeah, because F is for solar
Solar
and is subject to site plan review.
Special permit.
Requires it.
I think maybe 2 or 3 did.
Hey, Lisa, is that any better?
Yeah,
There you go.
that's
Fixed
so
it.
echoey.
Fixed it. These mics weren't on. We were using the microphone up, I think, in the webcam there, so.
Oh,
Nice.
I end up
Nailed it.
I keep saying.
Well, I think it's better. I don't know. I'm reserving judgment a little bit here.
So the question was, for F, it says, for solar energy systems subject to site plan review.
Yeah, I heard that part.
What
Is the
are,
building permit subject to site plan review?
Well, if you're going to have anything but a roof mounted system, you have site plan review only because you need to know where the location are for setbacks and everything else for a, freestanding array, you're gonna have, you have to see that, so I require a site plan review. And anytime you have any.
Just trying to take it out of general
yeah, so
requirements.
that's a tier 2 or 3
everything.
specific, yeah.
If it's on the roof, I mean, in general, they give you a layout, it doesn't necessarily have to be a site plan
Yeah,
view, it's just a layout of how it's being positioned on the roof.
yeah, I'm just trying to see where it should be placed, if not in general, so 2 or 3.
So do you feel that we need then, because you asked that question, would that be something someone else might ask? And so you
No,
want
I think we had the discussion of trying to leave the general requirements as what would apply to tier 1, 2, and 3, regardless of your tier.
Yeah,
So
okay,
if site plan is only gonna be for 2 and 3, you take it out of general and place it into its respective tiers.
okay.
I was wondering why the little lights weren't on.
I
You
don't
know,
think
it
that
really
for the
is.
Board of Trustees meeting either, actually, now that I think of it.
But Lisa's right, it is bad, even in there, my room, it's.
It is so
Maybe
much
it's better
better.
now.
I was gonna say, it's usually
Go
okay
check
though.
it.
Usually I can focus on, like, right now I'm looking up in the fire code, if there's anything that we have in the next section that actually goes against the code, then we have to do a bunch of other steps, but usually you can do that and listen to what's going on, there's no way.
Go take a look.
You know, you
It's
guys
probably
talking
better now.
about.
Go try it, it'll be better now. These are these are echo canceling, that's not.
Well, I will tell you, yeah, I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to get hearing aids
I was
or
gonna
something.
say, you would have thought somebody would have told us if it was that bad like a year ago. Okay.
Or that I
Yeah,
can
maybe
see, like,
we should dry run some of these. We should be on the other side now and again. Yeah. Okay.
So were you saying that G can just go, or G
No,
should
just go
move down
just
into
into tier 2 or 3,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at that and
And
I'll
F.
move them, and F,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wait a minute, you said G is gonna go over?
G and F both
Up to the
can move
specific
into their
tier?
respective tiers. Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep, C would also go because that's for,
So it's basically to tier 2 and 3.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll stay in the document, they'll just move to the appropriate tier or tiers, in this case, both tiers.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. And then we get into the tier 1.
Yep, so tier 1,
Oh. So,
a lot of this was already, some of it was already in there, some of it was me adding back, if you look at, like D, when we started talking about pitched roofs and not extend, this was language that Mike had omitted that we had just put back in. That was kind of the tail end, I think, of the discussion last time.
so a lot of this is, it's like formatting. Okay, so.
The format,
You know,
I'll clean up the formatting between
No,
this
no,
one
no,
and the
no,
next.
but it's a more, actually, it's organizational, but it was like, one of the things I kept looking to for some guidance was the town of Ithaca, because they are right next door. And they actually had a section, and I think they did divide it by each tier, which I find, as Natalie said, a little repetitive sometimes, about just, so it was under the standards where it's later on, but now it's by tier. So our standards are by tier as opposed to general standards and then specific additional standards. So that they had some design standards. You know, some apply to all and some are depending on the tier.
Yeah, so I think glare
It's for all of them.
is in all of them, but if you look at like C, D, E, and F, those all talk about roofs, so those would only be under tier 1 because those are specific to
also
roofs.
under 2.
Well, I realize that they're down there now, but I don't think they should be, right? If,
But you have commercial roof mounted.
oh, and that's true, 'cause we
This
did
is-
do.
So, yeah, this
That's
gets, so it's like, how do we want to really do that? Do we say this always applies to everything? And then there are, like we do with our general conditions, and then we have additional conditions.
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of like a concept, not that we need to be specific now, but do you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, I think there's a
I
difference
get
though.
hung up on this. Every time I go through this, I think, okay, but all right. And either you're repetitive or are we not? I don't know.
I think it's fine to repeat glare in each category.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between the general requirements, like you want to do this, here's the requirements from the board, versus these things that you get here, these are design standards.
Yeah.
Right.
These are, as you're actually designing this, like you need to come to us to get a special permit. By the way, you know, this can't extend more than 20, that's just a design. And I think that's the difference between requirements of, you know, you getting the permit and what you have to come before the board versus an actual design standard. While you're actually building this or having it designed, here's the things that you have to follow.
And I guess if we do it that way, one of the concerns I keep bringing up is that, if it's a bigger system or something, you might want different height or setback standards. depending on the tier, perhaps. I don't know. It's a board decision, but that might work better, but I keep bumping up against that because I know in the town, for example, I mean, they even get to the point where you say barbed wire cannot be used. I can't imagine, but I think it is.
Yeah. I thought that I thought we had talked about this. If you look at the model law, they actually have an appendix, and I think it's by, I don't know, Carolyn, do you remember if it's, or anybody, if it's by, I think maybe it was based on the tier, that's what the setbacks followed, but there was some appendix in the model law.
Oh, yeah, there was a little chart or something.
Yeah, because I would assume the size of a commercial roof mounted wouldn't allow it to only be 8 inches between the roof and the highest system of the.
I was gonna ask exactly that.
Yeah, I don't think that would be.
So if you take a look at the model law, they've got setback requirements, but those are, there's nothing for tier 1 or 2. And this is the model law, so right, we've modified our tiers a little bit. So they have setbacks for tier 3 and they have setbacks for tier 4, but those are based on the zoning district. So if it's a tier 3 in residential low density, here's the front, side, and rear setbacks. If it's a tier 3 and, you know, high traffic, here's what the setbacks are, so they change a little bit. Is there anything in there already, though, you know, as we talk about like site plan review, that would cover setbacks? I mean, I have no problem adding them in here just to make sure that we're clear on everything, but I'm just curious if there's.
Sort of going with our accessory dwelling setbacks.
Oh, right, yep, we talked about that last time too, yep.
So those would apply when you go for a special permit, which you must do.
The setbacks themselves are gonna be handled through the building permit, because if they don't meet the required setbacks, then I'm gonna tell them they need to go to they need to go for a variance, if that's the case. And Mike, as I'm going through, let me know when you want me to speak up here as far as is tier 1 solar energy system. I've got somewhat of an idea of what needs to be.
Go.
Yeah, that's where we are right now, so go for it, whatever feedback you have.
So what we need to add into there at some point is something to the situation of solar energy systems shall comply with the requirements of section 3111 of the 2020 New York State Building Code. If you do that, then you can eliminate some of these other dimensions that are on here because they're already contained within the building code.
It already says that in section A.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yep.
It doesn't have the exact section, we should probably give it to them. Is it easy to get a copy of the building code online? Because I've tried to look and I haven't been able to find it.
And most times it's available on Upcode. You can,
But
you can,
Oh, okay.
you can get
But,
anything.
yeah, I just don't want people to go down a pathway and not really understanding what that means exactly. Is there any, you know, I don't want to have it verbiage, but still, you want it to be clear to the average person. I mean, you know, I hate true confessions. You know, I really didn't understand about codes when I started out, and I'm not sure that I would have known where to go and what to look for.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Lisa, but I'm not sure we can list up it's actually in that section of the code, because if you read that section, it's quite complicated anyway, and it refers to 2 or 3 other books.
So actually, I guess I'm back to the whole unified solar permit. Anybody's going to be doing this is probably going to be dealing with that anyway. So hopefully, but don't want to make assumptions. All right, yeah, so 3111, 2020 building code. We just Google that, and it would come up and we'd know what to do.
Well, if somebody has that problem, Lisa, they're gonna be in Mike's office.
Yeah, and Mike,
They're gonna be filling out the unified solar permit with him, and he's going to be able to tell them what they need to know in that regard. And since they have to fill out that permit, they have to interact with Mike.
Yeah, I basically agree. Okay.
Like, the 3111 is going to, it references your roof mounted
solar, it also references your freestanding ground mounted solars. And then what it does, it refers to the fire code, refers to residential code. So it's like any other thing in the code, you're jumping all over the books to give you requirements. So you obviously can't list them all.
So in this case, though, instead of saying, shall comply with 3111 of the 2020 fire code, should we just say 3111 of the, I'm just thinking, okay, well, what if in 2 years we go and adopt the 2022 version? We don't want to come back and modify the law. Can it be the village's current adopted, whatever it is, version of?
New York State Building Code.
That's New York 106, right?
Yeah.
That's for documents. That gives you a list of
Well,
what documents need to be provided.
Yeah, but in general requirements, we don't even list a section. It just says in accordance with all codes, regulations, and industry standards as referenced in the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code.
Okay,
And that's fine.
so it's already captured
It's
then.
everything.
So we can, at least
we
we can,
can-
if you have suggestions then, Mike, about what's covered in there that we can take out of here.
Without removing too much information that Lisa would want them to have.
I think it's fine to have some general information, but,
Yeah.
right, there's gonna be some specifics that, right.
You can take out C and you can take out F. They're contained in there.
See,
I think F is good because it tells people what they can do when they're conceiving their plan.
Like I said, this is up to you guys. I'm just saying, if you don't want to be.
take out A and B
Or-
under C because they're in the generals.
Right.
I think we should add in B to the building permit line. So a building permit shall be required for installation of all solar systems. Code and zoning officer may require additional information.
Yeah, that goes to
process.
general.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That goes to general.
Yeah, to general,
A could go away.
yeah.
So you're gonna add to the building A?
Well, I think A can just go away because A is already captured up in general requirements. B can go up into, B can go into general requirements.
C is specific, C is specific, and E is specific.
For H, can we make that general and say all solar energy systems shall comply with height limitations in the village?
Yeah, because that already is covered
That's it.
based on, like, yeah.
And then we move that to general also, because no matter where or what, you're gonna have to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right, that, yeah.
That's
Oh, I
That's
see what you're saying, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you're moving height, glare,
Glare can go.
and B, code and zoning officer.
Mhm.
All of- So B, G, and H are gonna move to general.
As well as A.
Well, A can just
A,
move up. Is that already covered up there?
Already
A
covered.
can just be
That can just
omitted,
be gotten rid of, right?
and B will go into general.
Okay.
We're
And
just left with the red.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I have a question about F. It says, 24 inches above the flat surface of the roof, whichever is higher. Did that 24-inch number come from the model? Okay.
That was like a pick your own adventure type thing they included in there. And there's no backup on, here's how we came to this.
I'm assuming that they came to it something based on the way that these things are currently constructed. Whether that changes, don't know.
Right.
Also because of the fire code.
Yeah.
Being the other factor.
Probably that won't actually, given a lot of,
So some of what's in, well, any other comments on tier 6, or on number 6 there, permitting requirements for tier 1?
I think it's so much clearer now.
Okay. Which is what we want to do anyway. And when they get to the specifics, right, if I was going to do this, I would just go to Mike's office, and actually, I would just be hiring somebody to do all this for me anyway.
I was gonna say,
So well.
Okay, so for tier 7, I think there's a lot of things in here that can also get moved up just like above, so
Leave it for 6.
I'll tackle those. And I think that's what a lot of the, there were a couple, if you go down into 12, where it had environmental resources, this where we talked about tree cutting. So tree cutting, removal of, it says removal of existing trees shall comply with village section, and then I had put that note in there, as determined by planning board, minimum tree density 145.27C requirements may be modified or waived. That was one of the as determined by the planning board. Same thing is down below, as determined by the planning board, tier 2 solar energy systems, native vegetation, things like that.
There's height, which we could take out because we moved it, and glare.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna tackle all those same ones. I think we can just
Move 'em up.
add them once and then remove them from all the other areas, because they'll show up under tier 3 also.
Oh, wait, we're requiring a property operation and maintenance plan?
Where are you?
B3,
B3, property operation, okay.
that seems crazy.
Continuing site maintenance, anticipated dual use of property upkeep. Oh, that sounds fine.
What? You have to
What's the
submit
matter
a
with that?
property maintenance plan to put, that seems excessive.
Well, I think part of this one too, right, is commercial,
Roof mounted.
roof mount.
Yeah. Well, it's
What kind of ground maintenance do we care about if they're?
mowing on the roof, but
Oh, wait, hold on a second, though.
tier 2.
Well, in everyone's favorite, the very end of that sentence says may be required, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a second, let's think about this.
So, okay, so tier 2 captures residential ground mounted or any commercial, whether it's roof mounted or ground mounted. So it sounds like that.
Right.
So it sounds to me like that maintenance plan is more of a commercial.
Yeah.
Do we want to separate out?
Define commercial.
Commercial versus, because I do think you're right, it's crazy to ask a residential,
If I wanted to put a little one in my house,
yeah, up to 500 square feet, so, that's not very big at all. So I think something that we really differentiate commercial versus residential would be important.
And ground mounted versus roof mounted. I mean, would roof mounted, do we care about? So just commercial ground mounted.
We're back to this separating commercial and residential.
Of course we are.
I'm wondering if we can just update the language there to say like, that might, that's, if there's other ones specific to that, those are specific for commercial ground mounted, not residential ground mounted, not commercial roof mounted, obviously. But so maybe that one specifically is for commercial ground mounted. We don't have to go and break things apart separately, but we can add to that definition that says.
But what are we calling, but when you're talking about commercial ground mounted, everything's still limited to 110% of the use on the property. So you just mean like a business owning it.
Right.
You don't mean like
An energy farm.
Yeah.
I think that goes into those upper.
To put in solar panels, they need an operation and maintenance plan? Like, why do they need to?
Don't look at me.
Why, if it's big and you're generating solar panel for a business, that's different than we're just talking about a business putting in
Yeah.
a limited.
It's something out of the model. Maybe we don't need it at all.
There are larger businesses, so then the system will.
110% of Borg Warner is different than 100%
Right.
of the insurance company, whichever.
Right, but-
that is. So, yeah, maybe.
Well, there is
Well,
also
yeah.
the out of may be required, it's not gonna be, the board can decide. to
Yeah,
remove
but
it.
we should also change that maybe
Right, but it-
required language to as determined by the planning
Yeah, yeah,
board.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
Well, we should also specify that it's only for commercial.
Commercial.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because the whole point is we want to encourage, well, one of the
Even
points, is we
commercial
want
people,
to
does anyone
encourage
have to do
residential.
this? Does anyone have to put in an operation and maintenance plan?
We do for others, we do for other things, when we talk about stormwater, we require it. It's more of a, in case that, if the village has to step in this case, I'm not sure what that scenario would be.
Yeah, because this is not the business of solar panels. This is a business putting in solar
I
panels.
mean, if they
But
don't mean.
there's businesses and there's businesses. I mean,
It makes sense that we have a maintenance plan for things like stormwater systems,
Right,
because
that can
that
cause
impacts,
downstream issues.
yeah, but,
If they let their solar panel get overgrown because they're not taking care of it and doesn't generate electricity anymore, you'd think that they'd want to go and, I don't know.
Well, you have to well, if they're,
Something else, anyway.
or
yeah,
they have to decommission it because they're not using it, but, we're back to though, you just don't want it to impact adjacent properties. That's all. Is this going to make a difference in that regard?
I don't think an operation maintenance plan,
Well,
Okay.
maintenance, I think, is grossly overlooked every day.
okay, so I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna agree with you there, but one of the things that we can do is we can say, if you're not gonna buffer X, because that's what we're looking at, we're looking at
Right.
the impact on the neighbors. So if you have an adequate buffering plan, then we kind of don't care how tall you let your grass go. So the
That's
maintenance
true.
plan is not gonna come into play so much
However, if you can somehow say, I don't have an adequate buffer because we can't plant whatever here, because there's, I don't know, overhead power lines or whatever, we might want to say, reserve that as an or.
But then they're coming in for a special permit, so the planning board can just require that as a special permit for this specific
true.
project. We don't have to have that in here.
Okay.
And I'd also question what anticipated dual use means in also 3.
Yeah, where was that?
What does that even mean?
Would that mean for agricultural, like, are you gonna keep sheep there? I'm assuming that's the only option. That's the only
Well, that would be the agrivoltaic.
I think as we've structured everything, this whole line is from a different version of the document.
So do we agree that for commercial stuff, we do want some property operation maintenance plan, if determined by the planning board, or do we strike this whole thing?
I think
we can strike the dual use
The
and,
special permit covers that.
okay, so just strike that entire line?
Strike it.
I would.
Remember it to be.
So we're deleting 3?
Yes.
Just a suggestion.
If in fact something like that does become an eyesore, it can be covered with property maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might see a notice anyway.
Okay, so number
We'll
5,
send
we
our
can move,
code
number 6, we can
officer.
move.
I did, if you go back up to B2, screening and visibility, tier 2 solar energy, that's where I added that, shall have views buffered from adjacent properties to the extent reasonably, blah, blah, blah. And then I did put the buffering plan as subject to planning board approval, because they had that reasonably.
So number 4, the setbacks, do we want this here, or is the setback a general condition because it's gonna apply to all tiers, even though it technically will never apply to roof mounted? I think it's.
I agree with you, yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
I think, is there anything up there under general conditions that already covers that? No? We can just move,
Pause for a second, though, on setbacks, and just make sure that's really what we want to do. We don't have to pause tonight, but make sure those are the distances we really want to do, and
absolutely, yeah, because, yeah.
So are you gonna keep, can we get rid of reasonably practical? Well,
Where's reasonable?
Under,
practical, under B standards 2. I
just say
always
shall have views buffered, yeah, we
just
can.
make it to the
To the
extent
extent
using
reasonably practical, that can go.
from adjacent properties using, just strike the extent reason. I don't want to hear,
yeah, I agree.
I don't want any
You're totally
total.
right.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
That's very weak language.
Yep. And it's lawyer language, excuse me, Natalie, but we aren't, so this is what I would like to see.
Okay, good.
What else as we move down through there? Obviously, there's some other ones down there as you get to height and all that stuff that I'll do the same thing that we did for 201. I'll move them around.
I think we need to look into and get some information on a maximum distance that's reasonable for a commercial roof-mounted panel. Is 8 inches something that can actually happen on a commercial roof-mounted panel?
Oh, so you think it's more than, the height?
Maybe.
I don't know the answer, but I just think
Oh,
it's, you don't want to put in a requirement that no one can then actually meet.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Mike?
I'll look into it more, because if it happens to be different than something that's quoted, if it's less restrictive, then we have to go to the state to get a variance for us to put it actually in our code. So I'll look and see if there's anything listed at all about the 24 inches. I have not been able to find anything yet.
Okay.
And also the 8 inches in number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for the setbacks, that we're gonna just move up into general conditions for all of them, yeah.
I think 24 is gonna be okay, but 8 inches isn't much, is it?
Mm-mm.
That doesn't sound right for commercial.
Better put in some solar panels after this.
We already used the tree ordinance once, come on.
Yeah, we need somebody to step it up, come on. We need our first
Not
case.
yet, though, we're not ready for them.
No, that's true.
Do we want 12A to be in general?
Environmental resources, the tree cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's
Oh,
specific to
yeah.
tier 2 and 3, but setbacks are really only specific to tier 2
The
and 3
removal
also.
is
but-
subject to everybody, but if you're roof mounted, why are you cutting down trees?
Because you've got a tree in the wrong spot for,
Oh, there you go.
there's a tree shading
I mean,
your
you still
roof.
have to abide by it anyway. You'd get any parcel is subject to that, rule, no matter what. I don't even think we need I don't think we need to say that this is subject to 145-27B, because everyone already is subject to 145-27B.
Only if you're getting a special permit, though.
No.
Oh, that's the one piece.
Oh,
that's-
subdivision.
145-27C is only if you're getting a
That's
special
right.
permit.
I love it.
So everyone's already subject to 145-27B.
I think it might be really useful, though, in this one case, to really be specific about trees and how we approach trees with solar panels.
I support that also.
So then does it belong here or up in general conditions? Because you'll have a repeat of it for, yeah.
The
B,
B part should be in general, the
yep.
C is only in tier 2.
I do agree that nobody knows. what
decommissioning
sort
plan you're
of-
talking
and
Exactly.
It's not intuitive that you would.
oh, I see, yeah, 145-27C.
Yeah.
That is only
Setbacks are special.
for special permits.
That's a newer one.
So the
So
first.
you're saying that,
That's another, I'll just scan this to you.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
what did
What
you
it sounds like is
decide?
that we're gonna split 12A into two parts. And the first sentence of
Gonna go to general.
12A will go into general, and the
Yep.
second sentence stays in tier 2.
Yeah, okay. Got it. That's what I thought, but I want to be sure. Yep, everybody should know. We want to emphasize the tree thing, always.
Okay. For the decommissioning plan there, is that something that we want for, again, this is, I would say for commercial ground mounted, yes, for commercial rooftop mounted, yes, for residential ground mounted, yes, no?
Everyone, I think. You don't want dead panels sitting around.
Well, the way it's phrased, it's quite general. It could go up to general.
But it
Because it
also-
says when the planning board requires it, and so if you have a small enough residential permit, when you go to get your special permit, they're not gonna require it.
And the financial security bond is not less than 50,000. That's gonna scare someone who's putting ground mounted at their own home.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
It's gonna be more than the cost of the actual,
Yeah,
so,
that's if required, but still,
I would say let's get rid of the numbers if we can. And then, because what it's gonna cost to have a bond now versus what it's gonna cost to have a bond in 15 years might be really different.
well,
That's just straight from the model law, you got that?
oh, yeah, that's
Section.
straight out of it.
so
And that's
again,
interesting too, because that's not even a, hey, here's what we think the dollar figure should be, here's what the dollar figure is.
right.
Yeah, I think
Well,
taking out, but not less than 50,000 is a good idea.
So in the town,
Shows what they're anticipating.
Yeah.
we require a decommissioning plan and bond, but they just say something about, if it's not completed and functioning within 18 months of the issuance, they also talk about kind of slow starts or, something that gets stalled in the beginning. Do we want to deal with that? Like they start putting up stuff and then they don't finish? Says in the event it's not completed and functioning within 18 months, that we could notify to complete the construction and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, there's some other thoughts there that were something I didn't think about. Or if it stops performing, at what point, if it's not functioning, do we want to set any limits regarding things that are no longer functional?
Is that in their section of their plan that would apply to properties that are only doing on-site usage, or is that for, anticipation of commercial?
No, it doesn't seem to be
businesses.
commercial, actually. If the so then we just wanted them to decommission the whole system.
I mean,
owner, operator.
Nancy Meadows gives me pause to not having something in, because in 10 years, if they're playing back this video, and they saw that we discussed it, and we're in a Lansing Meadows situation, we're gonna feel really dumb.
Is this the model law, or did you take this from the village law?
That's
This
a model.
this is Town of Ithaca.
No, the language that's in there now,
Let me go
because the
back. I'm pretty sure it's-
decommissioning plan language that's in tier 3 is more substantial.
It
so
might
I
have come from a
wonder-
different, I've got the model here.
The model had more substantial,
Yeah, but Mike Baker said this was from the model law. I think it mirrors the Village of Lansing current decommissioning plan requirements.
I assure you, that's not where I got it from, but
Okay.
maybe that's where it came from.
but also,
I didn't know if Mike Scott changed that.
oh,
Yeah, I'll have to go and take a look, I'm not sure. I didn't get it from there, but it could have been something from Mike.
Okay. Yeah, it's on the M. Scott.
Okay.
I think that Lisa's right, though, we should add something in the general requirements about a plan that is stalled, and the village being able, and like, let's not put a size requirement, let's not put it in a certain section, let's make that a general requirement, something about stalled projects. And Lisa, could you read that language back again to us?
Okay, in the event that this was specific to photovoltaic, energy system is not completed and functioning within the 18 months of the issuance of the initial building permit. This was a building permit. The town may notify the operator and/or owner to complete construction and installation of the facility within 180 days, well, plenty of time, of the date of notification. If the owner and/or operator fails to perform, the town may notify the owner and/or operator to implement the decommissioning plan.
Great, let's
That's
do
wonderful.
that. Let's do that, too. Good find, Lisa.
So that's from the Town of Ithaca. Decommissioning 6A. Mike, in case you need to know.
Yep, got it. Okay.
I'll just forward.
Anything else there under tier 2?
No, but I just have a bit of a random question about decommissioning, or bonds in general. What happens if somebody sells the property? Does the bond go with the property?
That's a question for
It's
him.
usually addressed in the plan, but I think it was in here.
It's on the last, the very end is.
Change in ownership.
Oh. That's here
Assumes in
somewhere.
writing all obligations of the decommissioning plan, so they would have to assume the bond.
Oh, it's on page 158, but 13. Oh, yes, 13 decommissioning. There is,
Or replace it with their own bond. I mean, they would need to do everything that's in the decommissioning plan.
so it
It's
goes
also
with
on page 160, section D. And we want to move that to the general conditions?
Yeah, I think just add it into the decommissioning plan language that on change of ownership, they have to assume all conditions and responsibilities of the decommissioning plan.
so that passes. So the obligation passes to the new owner?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in there with the language under general requirements.
Do we have any means of ensuring that new owners are aware of that?
Yeah, I was just thinking that too.
You know, like I'm thinking like, for, ag districting laws, because of the way the ag districting law is written, you have to have a waiver that you sign.
Unfortunately, it's really deals with solar panels now are kind of just like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna mention that there's solar panels being transferred here,
Okay.
and we're all just gonna go like this. And like, so there's really nothing established in like the real estate law world to ensure that people are aware of that. So,
Well, I mean, theoretically, in the village, there'd be a record of the bond, and some, we'd have records of it, so that if someone says, oh, I bought this house and it has this thing, I gotta get rid of it, they'd come and they'd check how to do it, and they're like, oh, you have a bond for that.
and I mean, it sounds like it would likely only be for larger
yeah.
systems, so it may not be the run-of-the-mill
No,
home sale.
no, it's mostly
Right.
a larger commercial.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put some language in there about it and
So
modify it.
one of the other topics that were in the town thing that I sort of didn't think, how does this work exactly? Where, and they're in these model things too, is like lighting. What kind of lighting are we talking? I don't. What would be an example of the lighting? Lighting and signage and utility connections.
I think those speak to larger
Yeah.
commercial panel or solar farm
Yeah.
type issues.
If you look at some of the larger ones, like as you go up towards Dryden, you'll see, I don't know if you want to call it a structure, but there's clearly some like, you know, at your house, the wires, you know, kind of from solar panels, they, you know, run into your meter, or they, you know, they're kind of incorporated into it. At some of the larger ones, you'll see like sort of smaller facilities run out, I don't know if they're junction rooms where everything runs into, and you'll see like some signage and sometimes some lights on them. But it's not like, you know, some like glaring light. I don't think it's meant to like light up the entire area. I think it's meant to, you know,
Give you access.
identify that area, and while you're there, you can see like if you needed to get into the panel or. But I mean, I would have to imagine that as you do talk about, you know, bigger structures, they've got to have, or, you know, bigger facilities, they've got to have some structure. I mean, I just think about Lansing Meadows, he's got that, what's that little building there by Chow called, Mike?
Quonset hut.
No, that's the wrong place.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, oh, over here. Sorry, wrong place.
Oh, nightmare. Okay.
So I mean, like, even for what he has there, he's got this kind of small facility that things run into. I have to imagine larger scale solar facilities are gonna have something similar, where lighting and signage and things like that would all come into play. I don't know if that's all covered under, is that part of, you know, the actual solar aspect of it, or is that part of some accessory structure law, or I don't know. But it's, I would imagine it would follow all the same, you know, lighting laws and everything that we already have in place.
Because one of the things it said was, you know, if, for emergency contact phone number, I remember when we did our best system, you know, you wanted to have some of that, but is that something we need to consider here, or?
Maybe
Exactly.
worth out for everyone to read through the town of Ithaca
Yeah.
code and see what pops out as them as being helpful.
Do they have the special permit system that we have?
That I don't know.
Do you remember?
Imagine that our, because
Well-
we're so small and we review everything individually, it gives us the opportunity to put less than
Yeah, they have
and more control in the building. They do.
They, well, you know, the way they organize it, they general requirements, they say building permits are required for all, and then they get into stuff, and then they, yeah, I guess, additional standards for
But I
small
think there's
scale.
also an issue, not an issue, but a concern that as we're just going through special permits, if we don't have some sort of checklist, and maybe it's just an off-the-books checklist, it's easy to forget things that you want to hit in a special
Mhm, yeah.
permit
That's
with
true.
conditions.
No, we like an on-the-books checklist. I agree with that. That's one thing we've learned.
Yeah,
Could I just change the topic for a second? Is Lansing Meadows building another building?
who knows?
They're supposed to.
Are they? It's,
Supposed to do phase 2.
they're building right now. Okay.
Are they?
I kind of felt something happening. Oh, really?
Well, I think they're about,
Felt it happening?
I just
Sense it, feel it.
and I was fighting sense. What's going on up there?
Oh, well, okay, so is there any other, anything else under, the tier 2 system piece? Okay. I want to hold off on the tier 3 piece. What I'll do is I will go through the tier 3 piece, and I will make all the changes that we decided on 1 and 2. I'll make the same sort of things there, and I'll try to make them by the end of this weekend. I have a couple long flights that I can just clack away on, you know, updating this draft. and I'll get it back out to people so we can take a look. I'd like to, at the next meeting, just quickly review the things that we did here, that we moved around, kind of like we did between last meeting and this one. And then let's focus on what makes sense for tier 3 at the next one. And we'll try to get some clarification on some of the, what do we, not that it is tier 3, but above that, what, as a municipality, we have if somebody wants to come in and
Yeah.
build a solar farm somewhere.
So will you be continuing to keep the strikeouts on the main thing? Or are you gonna start dropping
I'll probably give you all the things that we said yes tonight, these are good, I'll commit them all, and I have a revision of it, and then I'll send out a new one with just fresh changes that we haven't talked about, so it's not, here's all the changes that we already talked about and agreed on, no, all those things I'll commit to the document.
drop out?
And
Okay.
you'll have just a fresh document with new red lines on it.
Okay.
Okay. Where's my agenda? Oh yeah, I'm using it for notes. There we go. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the trustee report. I think that was you, right, Jim?
It is.
Okay.
Well, we have two trustee meetings to report on. The first one was on March 6th, and it lasted from 7:30 to 9:16. It was a lot. They opened the public hearing regarding local law B for 2023 regarding replacing the lighting commission with the code and zoning officer. Closed very quickly, and local law B was enacted as local law 2 for 2023. So can everybody hear me, or it sounds like there's an echo?
Nope, we hear you.
I can hear you.
All right, so that was enacted as local law 2 for 2023. So the lighting commission is born. It's up to the code office. And then there was obviously a long discussion of the proposed budget for 2023, 2024. And probably the biggest takeaway from that,
Uh-oh.
We lost you.
Oh, there you are. We can hear you now.
Okay, I was waiting for the kind of clattering to stop. Okay, so anyway, the big highlight, probably for everybody in the proposed budget, is an 8% salary increase for staff, for all staff, because of inflation. 25% raise for the planning board chair from 8,000 to 10,000. And
There you go.
person,
There you go. That was for you.
5,000. So, and they talked about a public hearing in the budget in April. So that was it for March 6th. So March 20th was a shorter meeting. It was about 25 minutes. The mayor opened discussion regarding the budget. There was no discussion regarding the budget at that meeting. April 3rd, 2023 was set as the public hearing for the proposed 2023-2024 budget, which is the Board of Trustees meeting. Whenever, whoever has, that will be on April 3rd. And then they adjourned to go into an executive session regarding the personnel, the quote unquote personnel issue. So all of us on Zoom and who weren't part of the Board of Trustees had to leave. And there's no more to report.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'll look up who has the next one in case anybody, I forget who it is, but we can move on to other business. So Lorraine, did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
I just wanted to mention that I went on the tour of the new open access DTAX and stabilization center. Susan Ainsley came with me. And so we were pretty fascinated. It's a well thought out plan that they have. The building, they're still finishing up some of the construction, but they're just about done. And of all the things, I forgot to ask when they're planning to open. But anyways, they talked about the 3 programs that they're going to have there, 24-hour open access, detox, and the stabilization center. It's a 40-bed facility. They're planning to hire 35 to 40 staff members. So they did say they know they're going to have a hard time finding people because this is a tough time to be hiring. So if anybody knows anybody that's interested in this type of work, send them their way. All of the employees will receive crisis training. They're not going to have any on-site security, so there's not going to be a hired security company or policemen or anything like that. But they do have 84 security cameras, inside and out, yeah. In fact, they even showed us the room where all the equipment was. So yeah, so they won't be hiring any additional staff because of the cameras. They're going to have clinical and medical staff will be available, and they will be available to do on-site testing there and all kinds of things, administer drugs, like antibiotic type things. They've got a kitchen facility that's like a full kitchen. They talked about a local chef that's going to come in and cook for them. They didn't share who that was, but somebody that has volunteered. They also have a cafe that seats 20. They have on-site laundry, and yeah, they've got a lot going on. They've got a nice like fitness room. The YMCA apparently has already offered to come in and provide programming. And they're looking for, people have been volunteering from what they said, and they're looking for volunteers, people that want to come in and teach a class or anything.
Speak a little bit, you said they have 3 programs?
Yeah, so it'll be like, so the 24-hour open access.
What does that mean?
I'm not exactly sure what that means, but anybody can show up at any time. Susan might be able to actually pop in and say, you can show up there at any time, day or night.
And then what happens?
They let you in, and they'll take care of whatever your need is. Like if it's somebody that's, you know, trying to detox themselves, or somebody that's got an alcohol problem. They also mentioned somebody may show up with the police. The police might be bringing them there, but the facility will be available. There'll be people there 24 hours to let somebody in that needs to come in.
Right, what are the other 2?
So the other one, they're gonna have a detox area, which would be, I think they said 3 to 7 days detox in there. And the stabilization center, I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm gonna guess that might be like the drug.
Yeah. If I can jump in, it's a 40 bed, 20 male, 20 female, with an isolation. Well, Mike can address the recycled air. They have a section where if somebody comes in with contagious something or other, whatever, there's a place for them. And I think, I'm not sure how long the stay is. I think maybe up to 45 days in the 3rd floor area. I'm not sure. But we'll see. We'll see.
Do they have any current residents?
No, it's not open yet.
Sorry, what was the opening day?
We forgot to ask that question.
Well, I
You know,
think,
Mike?
I think
When they're opening?
April, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, oh, you would know, right?
I do remember that when we had the last presentation to them, I mean, when the thing that I think that's really important for everyone to know is that when they administer drugs, it's not going to be drugs that these people were taking or that any opioids. It is only drugs that they need to take, like antibiotics, diabetic, that kind of stuff.
Well,
I remember that was important, but I don't know how long they said. I don't think they're going to stay there for more than 30 days. Remember.
Well, they will give somebody who just walks in Narcan and let them walk out.
Right. But not drugs. It's not a, you know, methadone. It's not a methadone clinic or any of that sort of thing. I think that's really important for everybody to be sure. Anybody who talks about this understands that. And my understanding was that if somebody comes in the door, they will triage them to wherever they need to go. And it may be that they aren't going to stay there, but they will see that they get to a place they need to, is what, as I recall.
Are there other locations around town that provide Narcan?
I mean, I think every police officer has it. I think every
yeah.
fire department has it. A lot of people have Narcan.
I was just reading your Times article where this former addict who's in charge of some stuff in New York City, it was like, had this goal of like Narcan in every bar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's an amazing drug, I mean.
But I didn't know how common it was around here or hard to get.
It's not. hard to
People
get.
wouldn't schlep up from someplace downtown or whatever
No, they would
for
just-
Narcan, they would get it
No.
someplace closer.
If you need it, you're not in,
You're
you're not
not
in a
going-
position to
not
go
gonna
in
make out.
there. Yeah, somebody needs to bring it to you, and, yeah, you're not.
Where else would you would call the, if you didn't want to call the, police,
Paramedics have it, they.
didn't want to call the
Yeah.
police, then you would.
I think I mean, I have some recollection of a program where people could get Narcan.
Yeah, like private citizens could do
Private
that.
citizens.
Yeah.
Someone sort of did it about.
I don't know the specifics, but I just remember hearing
Yeah,
about
and I
it.
know like, a lot of the not-for-profits that serve anybody who might be a user,
Keep
they
it
all
honest.
have it, they have it like by the front desk,
Yeah.
basically.
Cottages.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
Thank
pretty
you.
ubiquitous.
Last I knew, they couldn't open because they had a staffing issue. Not enough people.
Yeah, well, like I said, she said they had to hire 35 to 40 people, and it didn't sound like they had started hiring yet.
Yeah, so it'll be a while probably. Anything else about it?
No, that was it.
Pat? Yumila?
Jim?
I don't have anything more.
Lisa?
No, me either.
Did you, Mike, want to mention anything about
Lansing Meadows, for example?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to mention, not about it?
Nothing that I can't send an email out to everybody.
Oh, I was gonna ask, is anybody gonna be able to go to the New York Planning Federation?
I am.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Oh, are you?
it's-
Okay. Good, good,
you guys
good.
also see the email about just the seminars that are coming up? Because I think,
They look good.
I've been to,
so Susan wants to go to all four, and Jody only wants to pay once. So anybody who wants to go to those seminars will probably come here to watch. I might shell out $25 myself.
I'm not sure.
NICOM seminars, I'm assuming you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
You saw it,
You didn't
didn't you?
share that with us. The only ones that I've been getting is the
That doesn't-
Natalie works,
Well, it's
I've been attending those.
up here at the date and time. If you want to resend the email, and you won't have to necessarily sign up, you can just drop in, because, although, do you have to sign up to get the credit? No, you can't sign up, because Jody just wants to buy the package for everybody, for the village.
I think what will happen is whoever attends that night, then Jody would have to submit the list to them, everybody's names who was here, and then you get a certificate.
It's not at night, though, they're during the day. They're weird times.
I know. No, I'm not dealing with it.
Okay. Last word, Natalie?
From my knowledge, you'll be seeing, not me anymore until August, but
August,
Fair
whoa.
chance.
Attorney Wendy Marsh, who's a land use attorney for Hancock, she has done some of the municipal boot camp presentations, if anyone has watched those. She'll be covering the planning board primarily, and when she cannot, Peter will be here. But Wendy has extensive experience either representing people coming to planning boards or helping planning boards with their projects, so I think she'll be a good fill-in.
She was just on the last one, or the one before that. I've done the last.
Yeah, she does.
Doesn't live here though, right?
No, she lives in Geneva, but she'll come in person, just so you can like meet her. And then if you're comfortable, she'll zoom into some.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I will not be attending anymore, because I'm done with my 2 months, so I think that you guys could be just fine without me on the solar law.
So you're going to zoom in?
You'll probably be happier. No, I'm not going to, unless you really want me to. I think you guys are gonna be just fine.
She'll come down for the next.
I'm gonna vote yes when it comes before the Board of Trustees.
You haven't seen the draft yet.
Okay. Assuming
Mentioned that one.
capable people draft something amazing.
To a gentleman who wants to do a presentation for your short-term rentals. I told him that it might be sometime here soon, because that might be one of the next things that you folks discuss on your agenda. So I do have him, I'll have him send down basically the bullet points of what he's gonna talk about, and then hand it out to you guys. If you want him to come down for a presentation, he said he certainly would.
Is he from Angel, or is he?
He's from Watkins.
Who is he?
Watkins Glen?
No, but what is?
I don't have his name off it. He comes to, they have a program for short-term rentals. He comes and discusses all about
the whole short-term rental system, how every other municipality is handling things, and he has a program that might be able to help identify that type of stuff.
That we already are part of the county-wide identification program. He's probably selling a software similar to the one that the county already is.
I'm just gonna find out what his bullet points are and give it to the planning board, and if that's what you wanna do.
Awesome.
I was gonna say, it might be what we already get. Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:47 PM.
Go ahead, Pam.
So moved.
Motion by Lisa, second by Pat. All in favor?
Aye,
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
good night.
Night.